is Mr. Chris Wright. And many of y'all have seen him. We've pushed out his material a lot to you because it's really exciting. It's the type of thing that makes you pause and instantly lights a fire that you want to put in front of your kids, in front of legislators, sometimes one and the same, and really say, sit down and watch this. Let me tell you a bit about his background. He's the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Board of Liberty Oilfield Services. He founded and serves as Executive Chairman of Liberty Resources, a Bakken-based E&P company, and Liberty Midstream Solutions. He has a lifelong passion for energy and its role in human life. He has spoken on energy to the UK House of Lords and the state's attorney generals, federal and state judges, and debated the merits of Shale Revolution on TV and given over 100 talks. He completed his undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering at MIT and graduate work in electrical engineering at both UC Berkeley and MIT. The acoustic well folks outside, they're based at MIT. Chris founded Pinnacle Technologies, and from '92 to 2006 served as its CEO, and they created and mapped hydraulic fracturing across this country. Its innovations led to further fracturing practices and helped launch commercial shale gas production. He was the chairman of Stroud Energy, an early shale gas producer, prior to its sale to Range Resources in 2006. He has consulted and taught courses and has a litany of patents and other types of innovations to his name. He grew up in Colorado, a passionate outdoorsman and very active in nonprofits. But I think what he'll tell you more about is thanking North Face for being a top oil and gas consumer. And he is waging a phenomenal campaign in Denver, Colorado right now, but really nationwide, pointing out the opportunities that we have, our strong history, our bright future. So let's welcome Chris Wright to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm very proud of this group and what you do in your day-to-day lives and in your advocacy for this industry and your pleas for sobriety. But most of all, I'm honored to be here because of what you do every day in your jobs. It is hard, I would say nearly impossible, to overstate the importance of what you do every day. Look, I mean, just to shoot straight, the oil and gas industry literally makes the world go round. We have a modern world only because of oil and gas. If oil and gas was gone tomorrow, as people claim they want it to be, there would be no modern world. That sounds crazy, but it's just compellingly true. Let me start with a couple comments about that. We're in the middle, maybe 2/3 the way through the third energy transition. The first is the invention of fire. It's about 1 million years ago, so the documents that recorded it are dusty and we can't really read them. But it allowed humans to liberate calories from a much broader range of food. Our stomachs can't digest and break down complex carbohydrates like cattle or elk or all the ungulates can. We need to break down those complex carbohydrates by cooking food. So that dramatically grew the food source available to humans. The second energy revolution was the invention of agriculture. Absolutely changed the world. You know, explosion in population, the creation of writing, history, art, cities, culture, civilization, written language. So it changed the world, but it didn't change the lot in life of the average person. Life expectancy was around 30 years before the invention of agriculture. Life expectancy was around 30 years after the invention of agriculture. And in fact, global life expectancy was around 30 years, 200 years ago, before the first oil and gas wells were drilled. But the arrival of oil and gas didn't just change world society, but most importantly, it changed the lot in life of the average human being. Think global life expectancy a little over 30 years. Now it's 72 years. People live more than twice as long. People are about 6 inches taller. Our genes didn't change, but throughout all of human history, the vast majority of the population were starving, underfed, never grew to their genetic potential. Most of us in this room would have had a child that died at a young age before the arrival of oil and gas. I usually recount what happened with our early presidents. All of them lost children. They were people who made it. This was not poor people. These were presidents. So life expectancy, poverty, a very personal one to me, modern medicine. Modern medicine impossible without oil and gas. Not just the wealth that allowed the time, universities, and travel for people to get together, but the essential materials of oil and gas, plastics, right? Think of fighting COVID. Your masks are made out of oil and gas. The ventilators are powered by oil and gas. All the PPE people wear are made out of oil and gas. I myself would never have celebrated my 14th birthday party. I never would have been married or had kids, full stop, without oil and gas. I'm type 1 diabetic. That's a death sentence throughout all of human history. You might have a few weeks, you might have a few months. The months will be ugly, you might survive a few months. That was until 100 years ago. Early modern medicine and plastic syringes, carrier fluids allowed us to conquer type 1 diabetes, and I plan to live to an old guy. Impossible without oil and gas. Food production, let's think of another one, even more basic. If we took oil and gas just out of pesticides and fertilizers, right? Those are very important to farming. If we just removed oil and gas from those two things, world food production drops 60%. 60%. That's not including transportation, refrigeration, wealth, tractors. That doesn't include tractors. So food production dropping 60% is a wild underestimate what would happen. So that, of course, we couldn't have an internet or modern communications, planes, trains, and automobiles. In fact, it would be impossible to build a wind farm or a solar farm or a nuclear power plant or a hydroelectric dam. Impossible without oil and gas. We had medieval wind farms. That's a 700 or 800-year-old technology, but they had dramatically different throughput, cost, output, or whatever. A modern wind turbine has 100 tons of coal inside every tower, inside the tower. That's what steel is. It's iron with coking coal, putting carbon inside the steel. There's an enormous amount of coal, increasingly natural gas, used for process heat to get that 100 tons of coal into the wind turbine tower. The blades are made out of fiberglass, oil and gas. The lubricating oils are oil and gas. The mining of the materials are impossible without oil and gas. Then they're shipped across the ocean, on ships burning diesel. Then they're maintained with diesel trucks. So this, how can we get to this sort of Alice in Wonderland world we're in today, where kids are taught in school that oil and gas is bad, it's evil, it's destroying the world, and we got to get rid of it as fast as possible. That's just completely nuts, but it is extremely common and growing today. And before I go on, I'll just say, the only way that changes is us. Our industry, I think, has just been terrible in this regard. Are we waiting for someone else to come and enlighten the public and make the case? That strategy is a guaranteed loser. And we have proof of it because we're losing. We're losing enormously. And personally, I think we talk too much about our industry. Because of modern world and because of technology, less than 1% of the world works in the oil and gas industry. And the hydrocarbon industry as a whole supplied 80-some% of world energy when I was born, supplies 80-some% of world energy today, and almost certainly will provide around 80% of world energy when I die. So it's enormously important, but it's up. Nobody's coming from the outside. No one else even has a spotlight to talk about this. We do, and we need to use it. We need to thoughtfully, soberly, and honestly talk about what we do with everyone we meet in every opportunity we get. The other side are opponents, and they are growing, and they've got huge power. They're still a minority, but they've got everyone else's eyes and ears that are leading the way. They're not honest, thoughtful, or sober. That's our advantage. So we can't sacrifice that. We don't want to be like them and be crazy, alarmist, and angry and all that. That's not the way we're going to move people's hearts and minds. But I cannot overstate how important it is to do that. And let me say two constituencies this matters to. Number one, as I said, a third of humanity, 2.5 billion people, they've not gone through this energy transition yet. A third of humanity cooks their daily meals burning wood, dung, and agricultural waste inside their huts and homes every day. A conservative estimate that just that activity, lack of access to clean cooking fuels, kills 2 to 3 million people per year. That's about equal to the rate of deaths from COVID. During this once-in-a-century, frightening pandemic, we have a death rate that equals the normal death rate just from one flavor of energy poverty. How come one shut down the world? It's led just the United States to spend $5 trillion to combat $1 trillion of lost economic activity. And the difference is because COVID has disproportionately killed wealthy people. Therefore, it's politically powerful, it's politically important. The people that live in energy poverty, that third in humanity, don't have political power. And frankly, politicians of all stripes just don't care about them, don't even know about them. That's my other big frustration in world politics, right? There's about 1 billion people that live even remotely in the fashion that we live. 1 out of 7.5 billion. But those billion people define world policies, world actions. The US government now is actively imposing the lending or supporting of building hydrocarbon infrastructure in the third world country. Can you think about that? 2 to 3 million people die from an easily preventable problem. And not only are we not that focused on it, we're actively trying to slow their rise out of poverty. 1 billion people have no access to electricity. Another 1 billion people only a few hours a day and low wattage. That's way better than nothing, but it's not enough to raise your wealth, to make your life better. The co-author of the modern world, the co-author of the lives that mean so much to us, is human liberty. That's why the company I run is called Liberty. Society historically was always top-down. Chief, chieftain, king, queen, prince, top-down, and people were subjects of rulers. Coincident with the arrival of hydrocarbons, we moved slowly, and we're not done with this one either, to bottom-up social organization, to empowering people to make their own decisions, to author their own lives. This leads to innovation and progress, and freedom's an end in itself. So hydrocarbons and human liberty created the modern world, and both are under assault. This is crazy, this is frustrating, this is human opportunity squishing, but that's what happens in society. Look, quick things about myself. When I grew up, so I was in high school in the 80s, and the mania when I was a kid was that we were running out of everything. Now, not just running out of oil and gas, but farmland and metals and fertilizers. I had a CU professor come speak to my high school and told us how by the year 2000, industrial civilization would be on the way down. Obama's science advisor, John Holdren, together with Paul Ehrlich, said the war against hunger is over and we lost. 100 million people will starve, tens of millions in the United States by the year 2000. Now, of course, these manias are as old as history. 100 years ago, we had a far more alarming one. Eugenics was widely subscribed to. We had multiple US presidents that were eugenicists. Harvard, Princeton, Stanford had huge efforts on eugenics, and California forcibly sterilized tens of thousands of women That's 100 years ago. That's a few generations ago. So when everybody believes something solely because everyone else believes it, that's a license to do anything. That's frightening. And again, the history is littered with the damage from these manias. This one is worse. It's worse because most everyone is subscribed to it. We are actively taking political action. We are actively killing or leading to the premature death of at least hundreds of thousands, and I think arguably millions of people every year, simply by standing in the way of letting people rise out of energy poverty. And energy poverty is essentially synonymous with poverty. I just put it in terms of energy. This matters. And look, real quick things on the Shale Revolution. The Shale Revolution caused this huge increase in oil production in the United States, right? 80% of the growth in world oil production over the last decade comes from one of the 99 oil producers, the United States. Similar stats for natural gas. So what did the Shale Revolution do? It dramatically lowered the price of oil, lowered the price of natural gas. I'm one of those oil and gas guys that think that's awesome. That's the single best thing the Shale Revolution did. We saved the world somewhere between $1 and $2 trillion every year. Of order $200 for every man, woman, and child living on the planet. Now, for the people at this swank hotel right now, that may be nice, but that's not life-changing. For a lot of people, it's absolutely life-changing. My favorite hydrocarbon of all is propane. So in shale, we have to produce light, low-viscosity oils, right? We're in that little window between natural gas liquids, and light oil. Propane's right in the middle of that stripe. Why propane matters is those 2.5 billion people that are burning wood, dung, and agricultural waste, the next fuel is propane. I was in Tanzania recently. 85% of Tanzanians burn wood, dung, and agricultural waste in their huts. 85%. But there's 6 companies there marketing LPG. Internationally, they sell it as liquid petroleum gas. It's dominantly propane, a little bit of butane. It's natural gas liquids. Think it's a camping stove. You get a stove in there, you fill up a canister, you fill up the canister every week, you have clean cooking air, and you've changed the lives of women in traditional societies. Women in traditional societies spend over an hour a day gathering fuel wood. You know, when you travel to low-income countries have a massively bigger environmental footprint because they become deforested, because you got to cook your food. Of course you've got to cook your food. I show in our report, this Bettering Human Lives report that we wrote as our ESG report, this picture of the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Everyone knows the picture of the Korean Peninsula at night. I want to live in the part with the lights. You know, that means human well-being, but it's also environment well-being. Haiti's deforested. Its largest source of energy, oil and gas by far, but a large part of its population gets energy the same way our ancestors did, and they've deforested the country. Dominican Republic consumes 8 times more energy, also completely dominated by oil and gas, but they have a rainforest, a tourist economy, a beautiful, clean environment to live. So people think oil and gas are killing the environment. Actually, quite the opposite. England, where the Industrial Revolution began, became deforested because coal didn't arrive in time at the start of the Industrial Revolution. Most of the forests in Europe were saved by coal. Most of the American forests were saved by coal. Now, of course, natural gas is cheaper and cleaner, less pollutants, less greenhouse gas emissions, but keep those separate from pollutants. They're not the same things. And we're moving forward. There's more forest-covered land today than probably we've ever had in the United States, far more than since I was born. Since I was born, the air's gotten cleaner in the U.S., the water's gotten cleaner in the U.S., the return of the big mammals. I'm an outdoor climber guy. I never saw a bear, a moose, a mountain lion, or even an elk in all my years as a kid adventuring in Colorado. Now my kids are bumping into them all the time. Like, this is when you can produce energy from deep underground with a small piece of land on the surface, you get a better environment, you get a cleaner environment, you get longer, healthier lives. So why is there just a crazy big movement to shut us down? It often goes under the name ESG, environment, social, and governance. I'm a longtime board member of Environmental Group. It's one of the awesome luxuries of being a wealthy society. This is a free market environmental group that's really focused on ecosystems and animals and all that. It's not a political activism group with a name that's environmental in it. Social, I'm very passionate about social causes. And I believe in governance, companies should be run for the interest of the owners and not for the interest of the management team. So I'm very passionate about ESG, but ESG movement today doesn't really resemble, I think, a fair assessment of E, S, and G, right? It's dominated by concerns about climate change or stated concerns about climate change. For my original company, we had a business line in monitoring CO2 sequestration. So I had a financial interest to be knowledgeable about climate change 20 years ago. And I've been speaking and studying climate change for 20 years. Believe me, and I wrote a brief section on climate change in this report. I tried to make it digestible, short, brief. It's got 13 graphs, the summary data of what's going on. It's critical that we understand the basics of climate change, because our opponents and the political movement to do this and that about climate change, they don't understand climate change. And in fact, in all my dialogues with them, they're not actually all that interested in it. So when our companies say, oh, they want us to lower greenhouse gas emissions, and then we write ESG reports showing how we're gonna have 20% lower greenhouse gas emissions 8 years from now, and we're gonna report on it every year, all things being equal, we should drive down greenhouse gas emissions, but it is nowhere close to the most important thing we can do to help the environment, to help human beings, to help the world be a better place. Not even close. But there is a belief the world is gonna end. Who's it? A UN head said it's code red for planet Earth when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Assessment Report 6 was released. And you saw all sorts of other just crazy headlines. Did any of those people read the IPCC AR6 report? I can almost assure you, no. Because none of that is in the reports. And I cover a little bit of that data from the IPCC in this report. There's been no increase in hurricanes, floods, droughts, tornadoes. This is uncontroversial in the scientific world. No increase in extreme weather. That's what's in the reports. And then think of the media, think of the politicians. Because extreme weather scares people. It's very politically effective. And in fact, the most important component of extreme weather is, what does it mean to human beings? So 100 years ago, 500,000 people died every year from extreme weather. 500,000. Over the last decade, that's been about 25,000 people a year. So a 95% drop in the number of people killed from extreme weather every year, and world population grew almost fourfold. So your risk of dying from extreme weather over the last century, and it has been a continual decline, has declined somewhere between 98 and 99%. But yet today, we have the highest anxiety of kids and humans of dying from extreme weather when we've been never remotely as safe as we are today. And where do those people die? Where do those 25,000 people die? Low-income countries that don't have energy to build stronger houses, to evacuate, to do all those things. And in fact, the last 2 years have been the lowest 2 years of extreme deaths ever, below 10,000 people. So just because the facts are A, if the narrative is B and everyone believes the narrative, then B is what matters. But it's our job in our industry to speak up proudly, soberly, and to engage people in this dialogue. Those 2.5 billion people that are in energy poverty, they need us. Over 10% of Americans get a utility disconnection notice every year within the last 12 months. Within the last 12 months. About 12% self-report that they keep their house at an unsafe temperature. They don't cool it as much in the summer. They don't heat it as much in the winter, right? Low-income elderly people die because they can't afford to pay their utility bills. And what are we doing? Driving them up, driving utility bills up, driving utility reliability down. And this is green. This is to stop climate change. So look, I'll end with just saying, please engage on these dialogues. Don't wait for everyone else. It's up to us. It is up to us. Last stat, because I'm a data nerd. Germany, 10 years, $1/3 trillion. This economy is 1/7 the size of ours, so maybe $2 trillion in US money, just on their energy transition, And what did Germany achieve? They went from 2010 getting 80% of their total energy from fossil fuels. They spent $1/3 trillion. They more than doubled their electricity price, probably tens of thousands of excess deaths from that increase in their electricity prices. And what do you think their 80% of energy from fossil fuels, what is it today? 79%. So, look, this is the math, these are the numbers. The IPCC also does economics, right? If you extrapolate the current rate of warming to 60 years from now, 2 or 3 generations from now, what's their estimated reduction in per capita income from the impacts of climate change? These are economics from the organization set up to promote the climate change agenda. Their paychecks are paid by it. They go to these reports every day. Their estimated math of the economic impacts is somewhere between 0.2% and 2%. So in the next 2 or 3 generations, we might have the impact, reduction of income, of an additional very small recession. So that's not a crisis, that's not the end of the world, that's not a license to spend trillions of dollars and impoverish people, but it's being treated as such. When I testify or engage with people on this, it's not like they say those facts are wrong. They're unaware of those facts, and they're uninterested in those facts. So instead of laying down and just writing our reports, sorry, we're bad, we're gonna be less bad, we promise we're gonna go away, that's just, it's wrong and it's immoral for people in the world that need energy, and of course it's a losing strategy. It is a losing strategy. My last defense of that, because when I talk to people in our industry, they say, well, that's what everyone wants, there's huge pressure, we've got to align with these mechanisms. My pushback is twofold. A, this battle is long, but that sort of accepting the other side's narrative and putting our responses in that box is wrong for 2 major reasons. One, intellectual honesty matters, and 2, energy matters. So if you are supporting and saying this thing is the most important, even though the data compellingly says it's not, right? You're complicit in focusing your biggest efforts on something that's low impact on human lives, which means you're ignoring things that are high impact in human lives. You want to make the world a better place? Produce more propane. I could go on and on about the other things we can do. Those are what matter, but if we cede that to the other side because that's what's politically popular, the political winds change, and 10 years from now, when the world really does swing the other direction, how are we going to defend what we said and did? Yeah, we knew we were hurting people by doing this, but, well, that's what everybody wanted us to do. Our industry, everyone in this room and all your colleagues, read up, learn a little bit more about what we do, stand tall, stand proud, and engage your neighbors across the fence, and engage your friends. Encourage your companies just to write honest statements, investigate what we do, and tell other people, because no one's doing it for us. And I'll shut up there, because I want to have time for Q&A or hang out. But thank you for what you do. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Representative Gonzalez. Thank you for everyone in this room. I'm honored to be your partner. Heck, I didn't mention that. Yeah, so look, just like today, talking about facts and data or whatever, that's important, and I think it's important we're armed with it, but it doesn't move people. It doesn't move people. We need to engage people. So the North Face was sort of an opportunity to engage on the importance of our materials and our energy for an activity. And a little advice from a friend of mine was, if you made something a little funny, people will listen to it. I give these nerdy climate change talks or engage in this stuff, and maybe now those things get tens of thousands of views or something. That North Face video in like 3 weeks got 6 million views. And most importantly, it spoke to people in the middle. Look, there's 20% that are convinced that hydrocarbons are critical and they're important. We got those. There's 20% that when I talk to them, if emissions were zero, if it made everybody richer and happier, would you be in favor of it? Nope. But that 20% doesn't matter either. We're not going to move them. What matters is that 60% of the middle. The average person, they want to have a good life. They love their kids. They're not in this cause. They're just human beings living their life. They're the people that matter. And we need to communicate at them, not at this 20% or argue with that 20%. I'm visiting this 20%, but that middle 60% is what matters. And so we're going to do more stuff along those lines. In fact, I want to have an Academy Awards ceremony that I hope will start next spring, celebrating across the categories the best extraordinary customer of oil and gas in the environmental groups, in the renewable energy companies, in the manufacturing companies, in the tech companies. And I love the fact that all North Face's clothes are out of oil and gas. It's not like I'm chastising them. No, you're using oil and gas. Using oil and gas is a great thing. I'm celebrating it. We are celebrating it. But we're going to do more of that because it got people's attention. It was a little bit, if we can make it a little bit fun, we'll get more people to pay attention.